السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Continuing from last night's speech, one of Imam Hussein's alayhi salam last statements he made on the plain of Karbala, addressing the enemy camp, he said, "Muli'at butunukum min al-haram," speaking to the enemy camp, that your insides are filled with haram. Now, the enemy camp were Muslims, but the insides were filled with haram. Now, this haram doesn't have to be confined to the harams of the Sharia, because they wouldn't eat pork or they wouldn't drink haram drinks. And actually the enemy camp, they would fast, they would do their salat, they may even do salatul layl every night. So what does this mean when Imam Hussein alayhi salam addresses such a people who abide by the letter of the law, but their insides are filled with haram? Okay, it's important this. It means that they are failing in relation to the spirit of the law, in relation to the letter of the law, the halals and the harams. They are committed to that. But when it comes to the spirit of the law, they are failing. We shouldn't confine haram only to the letter of the law. There are many things which are haram. When we say something is haram, it means it's contaminating the soul. When the Sharia says something is haram, it means you're contaminating the soul and you'll be punished for it. When akhlaq says something is haram, it means you're contaminating your soul, but right now you may or may not be punished for it. It depends on the level of contamination. If it reaches a certain threshold, leading you to fail in relation to the Sharia, that's going to be problematic. But the important thing is there are many harams that we do and which contaminates us. We shouldn't think and we shouldn't suffice with the harams of the Sharia, because as I said last night, maybe someone does all the wajibat, refrain from all the muharramat, but still there are people who have failed their soul in many ways. This will become more evident as we speak. Other traditions that we have speak of saying, "La taj'alu butunakum qubur al-haywanat." Don't assign your insides as the cemeteries of animals. Animals have animalistic traits. Don't assign your insides as cemeteries of animals. This holy tradition can be interpreted in two ways. One is a superficial understanding and one is a deeper one. The superficial understanding is don't consume too much meat, halal meat even. Don't consume too much, like as if you are assigning your inside as cemeteries of animals with you consuming so much meat. Don't do that. But a more important meaning is animals have animalistic traits. Don't assign your inside, your soul, don't incorporate within your soul animalistic traits. And this is more important, because sometimes you do all the wajibat, but you're filled with animalistic traits. You refrain from the sins even, but you're filled with animalistic traits. And you're an insan, you're a human on the outside, but on your inside you're filled with animalistic traits. I'll explain that as we go through it here. And finally, one tradition reads, يُحْشَرُ النَّاسِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ عَلَى وُجُوهٍ تَحْسُنُ عِنْدَهَا الْقِرَدَةُ وَالْخَنَازِيرِ. That people will be resurrected on the day of resurrection in many different forms. So every person, they'll be resurrected in a multiplicity of different forms. And that multiplicity of forms that one will be resurrected as and embodied as in the hereafter, apes and pigs, they will look good compared to that. Because humans, because of different animalistic traits they've incorporated in this dunya, they become embodied as a number of different animals, like a wolf, a snake, a pig, and so a shark, and so on and so forth. And this, when you compare it with pigs or apes, they will look good compared to that. That is the potential humans have. The identity of the human is only disclosed in the hereafter. Right now it's only a human biological phenotype we have, and it's all the same. We all look the same. But the reality of us is only disclosed in the hereafter. And we may be more of an ape than apes, more of a pig than pigs, more of a wolf. That's how we're going to be manifested. It all depends on our actions. So someone may abide by the letter of the law, but at the same time be contaminating oneself. Now, there's one verse in the Holy Quran which starts with certain prohibitions of food. And then the last part of the verse is the verse in relation to Ghadir. Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. The first part of the verse was revealed early on, during the 23 years of the mission of the Holy Messenger. But the section of the verse which comes at the end was revealed towards the end of the 23 years. And then the Holy Messenger got that verse and placed it in chapter 5 verse 3. Chapter 5 verse 3 had already been revealed. It was about food and diet. But then the Holy Messenger added Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum. He added this part to the end part of this verse. The question is why, and what is the relationship between the beginning of the verse and the last part of the verse? Some say that maybe the enemy wanted to take this verse away, so the Messenger of Allah placed it somewhere, placed it next to a verse on food where everyone was familiar with that verse, and they added it at the end of that verse so that the enemy can't take away this verse of the Quran. That's okay, but since Allah has given the guarantee that He will safeguard the Quran, there may be other reasons why the verse of Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum was added after the prohibitions of food given. There's a link here. I want to go through the zahir of the verse and then the batin of the verse. And then inshallah we'll see how they are related, the first part and the last part, with one another. It's in chapter 5 verse 3. حرمت عليكم الميتة, that carcasses are prohibited for you. Dead animals, not slaughtered the Islamic way. Any dead animal, carcasses in general. Now, this is prohibited, but this wasn't a problem for the enemy camp. They would slaughter their animals before consuming it. The letter of the law is that dead carcasses, dead animals, it's haram to consume. That wasn't a problem for the likes of Shem. He would slaughter his animal in the name of Allah. So just because you don't consume dead animals, it's not game over yet. We have to see what is the batin of this verse too. There are many traditions. There are tens of traditions, Allama Tabatabai says, that mention that every verse has a zahir and a batin. You should never suffice with the zahir. What does the dead animal signify in the batini sense? And here traditions of Ahlul Bayt state that ad-dunya jifatun, the dunya, the worldly life, is like something dead, decay, rotten material. And so here, prohibited for you are dead animals. The zahiri is the dead animals that you shouldn't consume. But prohibited for you also is the dunya. When the Quran says dunya, it doesn't mean the cosmos. When the Quran wants to refer to the cosmos, it says samawati wal ard, the heavens and earth, wa ma baynahuma, and that which is in between. Dunya is something else. It's nothing to do with the sun, the moon, people, plants. Otherwise, the samawat and ard, the heavens and earth, it's all good. It's Allah's creation. Dunya is the worldly life. When you say, my car, my house, my spouse, my certificate, my knowledge, my children, my job, I did this, I did that. See, all these statements are pseudo, false attributes that you're making. The car is not yours, the house is not yours, the spouse, the children, the job, nothing is yours. All these are Allah's. And when you attribute it to you, this is called the collection of attributes that you make. Together, this is called the dunya. And so, حرمت عليكم الميتة, not only the dead animals, but this false attributes that you make to yourself. Otherwise, power, it's all Allah's. Creation, it's all Allah's. Knowledge, it's all Allah's. Honor, it's all Allah's. Prestige, it's all Allah's. But you attribute it to yourself. And none of it is real when you attribute it to yourself. It's like when children play with toys and say, this is father, this is mother, and this father is a pilot. They're playing with their toys. Look at all the false labels they're making. And then when they're called to have dinner, they just put all the toys away and they forget everything. These were just false labels they made. And we make these false labels in this dunya too. Academically, these false labels are called mental constructs. Do we need them? Yes, we need it. But we shouldn't get drowned in it. Why do we need it? Why do we need mental constructs like ownership? And you say, my car, my house. Marriage, it's a mental construct for you to say, my spouse. Otherwise, ownership and marriage, you can't pinpoint it in this world, in the samawat and ard. Marriage and ownership, they don't exist in the physical realm of existence. Yes, a man and a woman, they exist. A piece of land and a person, they exist. But ownership, marriage, and other things, these are mental constructs. But we need them in order to perfect ourselves. Why do we need them? Because if we don't have these mental constructs, such as ownership and marriage and honor and so on and so forth, what will stop someone taking your spouse from you or your land from you? You need some form of security to grow spiritually. And without these mental constructs, you won't have that security. And so humans have come up with this idea, this mental idea of, let's say, ownership, and then that piece of land is yours, and then no one can take it away from you. But it's a mental construct. Otherwise, land is Allah's. Creation is Allah's. But you're just doing that, making these mental constructs so that in peace, in harmony, you can grow now towards Allah without anyone stopping you. With marriage, it's the same. With marriage, you need this mental construct of marriage so that through your spouse, you acquire perfection. And we may speak how later, another time. However, what happens is, with these mental constructs, they become the goal over time. Property is not yours. The spouse is not yours. Knowledge is not yours. But all of a sudden, these mental constructs become the goal. And your goal now, before, was to know and to recognize absolute perfection, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but now your goal becomes a big house. Your goal becomes family. Your goal becomes a job. Your goal becomes prestige and honor. These pseudo-mental constructs become the goal. It makes you feel bigger and better. These mental constructs make you feel better. My children, my house, my car, my certificate. If you lose the job, you become disappointed. Why? Because you laid a lot of importance. You thought the job, which was a mental construct, is increasing your status. And now you think when you lose the job, when you lose the spouse, when you lose the house, or lose the car, or lose the certificate, you become disappointed. Why? Because you lost the plot. The plot, the objective, was to acquire perfection and incorporate those divine attributes of Allah, to recognize absolute perfection. To do that, you needed a house, a car, a spouse, education. But during this journey, suddenly the spouse became the goal, the house became the goal, ownership became the goal, prestige became the goal, and you forgot about Allah. You forgot about incorporating divine attributes. No one is saying a big house is bad. No one is saying education is bad. No one is saying children are bad, spouses are bad. But when the Quran says your spouses and your children are your enemy, It's because when does that happen? Not the physical child or the physical spouse, that mental construct that you made of my spouse, my family, my certificate, all these different things, this was detrimental to you because none of it was yours. You took honor from these things when it wasn't yours. You only constructed them to get closer to Allah, but you forgot about Allah, and these mental constructs became the goal. And so the child wasn't yours, the spouse wasn't yours. When you lose the spouse, why did you become disappointed? Okay, there's a degree that is on a par with the fitrah. But when Ya'qub was disappointed and cried for being distanced from Yusuf alayhi salam, it wasn't because Yusuf was his son. It was that distancing from someone who was a very strong and maybe stronger manifestation of Allah compared to Ya'qub. That's why the awliya become disappointed. But we become disappointed when we lose a child, a spouse, a job, a house. These are very low manifestations of divine attributes. But we become disappointed. Why? Because we attributed them to us. My this, my that, the ego. And when you lose the house, the car, the job, the family, whatever, you become very disappointed. But these were just the means. You should never become disappointed when you lose the means. And so prohibited for you, in addition to the dead animal, is the dunya is prohibited for you. You may be a good Muslim on the outside. You may abide by the letter of the law on the outside, but you are drowned in the dunya. And it even becomes fashionable to be drowned in the dunya as long as you're a good Muslim on the outside. Everything is just a superficial side. And this is haram from an ethical aspect. Inna dunya bahrun. The dunya is an ocean. فَقَدْ غَرَقَ فِيهَا جَيْلٌ كَثِيرٌ. And waves of people get drowned in it. Don't contaminate your مُلِئَتْ بُطُونُكُمْ مِنَ الْحَرَامِ. Imam Hussein to the enemy camp who succeeded in the zahir said, you're filled with haram. One form of haram is the worldly life, being drowned in the worldly life. It's very easy. You can test yourself. If you become bankrupt, for example, if you lose a loved one, how will you behave? If you lose a job, how do you behave with people? If you lose your honor before the people for something you never did, how would you behave? Most spiritual ills like anxiety, or for example these compulsion disorders, these obsessive disorders, the root of it lies in the absence of Tawheed. The goal is absolute perfection, but our goal has become these mental constructs, and therefore we're drowned here in the dunya. Then the verse continues, Waddam. Also prohibited for you is blood. Did the enemy camp against Imam Hussein, would they drink blood? Is drinking blood an issue today for me and you? Of course not. But what is the batin of blood? In the traditions of Ahlul Bayt, blood is on a par with an excessive shahwa. For example, when one's sexual appetite is excessive. Sexual appetite is a must for everyone. We're humans, but it's halal. But when you overdo it, you become more animal-like. You have to discipline your different appetites. One appetite is this form of appetite, of shahwa. You have to discipline it so you remain a human being. In the letter of the law, many things are jaiz, permissible, but that doesn't mean you should do it. Overeating, according to the letter of the law, is jaiz, but it doesn't mean you should overeat. Many forms of appetites of shahwa, they may be jaiz, but it's haram from a batini sense. You're contaminating yourself. This contamination, you don't know how it's going to end. You may then give in to Sharia haram actions if the level of contamination reaches a certain threshold. وَلَحْمُ الْخِنْزِيرِ, pig meat is haram. Now, but the enemy, they wouldn't consume the meat of pigs. Umar ibn Sa'd, Shimr, these people didn't have a problem with pig meat. They wouldn't consume it. So what is the batin of pig meat? Because the zahir of pig meat, we don't have a problem with that. Like the blood and the dead animal. Our struggle and challenge is the batini meanings of these. And that's why you should never suffice with the zahir of the verses of the Quran. Why is pig meat haram? Because if you consume pigs, you will incorporate pig attributes. That is why pigs are haram. Not because they have certain chemicals which may or may not lead to cancer. We don't know about that. Some people may stress that pigs were haram because there are some nitrites that are found and these lead to cancer. And they say, look, Islam 1400 years ago, alhamdulillah, they understood this. But then the same chemical is found in other animals, like cows. And what are you going to do then? Pigs are haram because if you consume it, you will incorporate pig attributes like greed. Your greed will increase. Why are predators haram, like the tiger or lions? Why are predators haram to consume? Because you will incorporate predator attributes. Why are reptiles, why are insects haram? Because you will incorporate attributes of insects. If you carefully study the behavior of people who consume insects, you'll see that they will incorporate certain insect behavior. I don't want to go into detail here now. Why are cats haram? Because cats have certain attributes which are detrimental to the soul. Dogs are haram because you will acquire dog attributes, the negative ones. That's the philosophy of why some meats are haram and some aren't. That of cows and camels and sheep, these animals are benign, they're harmless. They don't have any prominent negative features, prominent ones. They're very benign, harmless. But even if you overdo it with these animals, you will incorporate cattle behavior, like being lazy, sloppy, and so on and so forth. And that's why you have to kind of eat less. You don't have to be a vegetarian, but eat less. Once a day, once every 2 days, once every 3 days. Now here, greed is a pig attribute. The enemy camp, they wouldn't consume pig meat, but they had greed, they had pig attributes. And this is haram. Greed is haram, not from a Sharia point of view, from a batini, tariqa point of view. Greed contaminates the soul. And contaminating the soul will lead to that spiritual downfall sooner or later. The enemy camp of Imam Hussein, like Shimr, his problem was the dunya. His problem was the greed that he had. The greed for power, for prestige, for money, for wealth. Shimr